Hello, everyone. How are you? Thank you so much for your patience and for giving me just some time to get my voice back. It still may crack a little bit, and you'll see me sucking my coffee down. And thank you so much for everyone for all the incredible videos. As I had mentioned, these are really my 5 go-to exercises. As I go through the videos, I'm going to give you feedback. And I know many of you have posted some questions in your forums. So if I haven't answered those in the videos, as we're talking, I'll definitely answer those in the forums as well. And I'll be pointing different things out and hopefully they make sense. And as a lot of you saw, these exercises may appear easier than they actually are. You know, getting a dog to stand for 10 seconds is not so easy. Um, I know with my own dogs, I sometimes have a problem with it, and I try to just get them when they're staring outside or looking outside. And speaking of my own dogs, my Clumber Spaniel is snoring right next to me, so if you hear the snores, that's what that's about. So we'll start here with the little Papillon and what's going on here. Um, and as we see, so Sparkle is doing great with the stand, and there's a natural head up. And when the head lifts up, there's a little bit more of a transfer of the weight onto the rear. Standing on an unstable surface, it makes it a little bit more difficult. As Sparkle is sitting and standing, we're getting more of the hip extensors working. And again, Sparkle, I want to call her Star, and I apologize, is doing great. With the front elevated on an unstable surface, we're getting more weight onto the hind limbs. So the unstable forelimb is challenging more. Standing on an unstable surface, we could see that the hind limbs come in a little bit closer. And probably here I would use something that maybe Taikva can lick or something like that. The backing up looks great here. This is a great setup. My one suggestion would be maybe stand in front of her because that may make it a little bit easier. We can see, and I know it's hard with the camera, on the walking uphill. This is great. Little legs, you know, it's hard to see exactly what's going on sometimes, but if you just focus on those little legs, we'll want to see the dog propelling up. So great job with that. Now we look at Soldier, and I know you had a lot of questions, and I'll answer more of those on your forum too. But so starting with Soldiers, just the stand, and this looks great. Even the little shift forward, we can see the back muscles start to ripple. And it's fantastic working on a great surface. And then here just on a slightly unstable. And here on the disc, this looks great. Something as simple as this is fantastic. Then we look at the sit to stands. Again, fantastic using that surface so he can't skid. It's much more difficult with the forelimbs elevated on the sit to stand. As we've seen with a lot of dogs, there's some movement to the forelimbs. Don't worry about that at all. I wouldn't expect them to be rock solid. So this looks great, what you're doing with Soldier, and we're getting a nice abdominal workout as well as some hip extension. Raising the forelimbs up a little bit, we're getting more of a workout onto those extensors, and he's doing great. I love how you're working with him here. And you'll get some more activity, and we'll start to see that. And this is such a lovely exercise for dogs that have weak hip musculature. We want to gain more hind end awareness, and this is a perfect setup. So those forelimbs up, and you're working through this, and all of it is good. And we're also, of course, as he stands up, getting some hind end awareness. The backing up looks great, and I love to use those targets. So great job with Soldier there. So another beautiful shepherd here. And as we look at the stand, so again, terrific on the carpet. And just holding that stand using food is fine. The unstable surface, we can see already that he's bringing his hind limbs in a little bit closer. And that again is also fine. So as he gets stronger, we'll see that come out a little bit more. The sit to stand, working on this. And I'm not getting very picky here. I just want to see the dog stand. And ideally, they're going to use their hip extensors and their body awareness. And we'll see it more on the unstable surface. So as we see that, we see he's a little bit more tucked under. Your technique looks great here. And as he continues to progress, we'll see those hips come back a little bit more. The front feet up on this object look terrific. So this is great. Just here, we're getting more shifting onto the rear. So great exercise for him, especially being a shepherd. The backing up, I love the targeting. I love the great non-slippery surface here. And this is helping with hind end awareness. Oh, what a beautiful field to walk in. So that looks great. And I often, will say to people that walking is such a fantastic exercise, and it really is. So getting outside and walking and doing that. I know some of you had heat issues, and just save it for when the weather cools, but walking on a variety of surfaces is fantastic. So if we look at Amber here and Amber's exercises, the backing up and targeting, great. So we see a good use of the hind end, and as she moves herself backwards. Working on the carpet is fantastic. Thank you for doing that. Sometimes the dogs get a little bit off when they're working on a slippery floor. With the forelimbs on the disc, this looks nice. I would probably take a little bit air out of that disc just to create a little bit more stability. So we want some instability, but not too much. And the same comment here, standing on these two uneven surfaces look great. And I would just take a little bit air out of that forelimb. And you could also think about maybe a larger surface. Forelimbs up here on the bench is great. So starting with that, we'll put some more weight onto the hind end. And then performing the sit to stands, we're going to increase the work onto the hind end. So that looks fantastic. Working with the unstable surface onto the hind end is great. Same comment, I'd probably just take a little bit of air out. So we have some, just a little bit more stability, a little bit more safety issues there. But this is great to work on core strength as well as the rest of the body. So, when you look at that, and often I get asked about the equipment and how much air is too much. And if the dog is really wobbling, you may want to just take some air out of that equipment. A disc should always look like a disc. So here, if we look at this other incredible shepherd here, so forelimbs up on an unstable surface and the hind limb, we're getting a great stretch here of the hind end. Forelimbs up and going into a sit is great. And we could see he moves his hips back into hip extension. Fantastic with the surface and the technique. So we're going nicely into that stand, again, working those back extensors and those hip extensors. And standing here on the unstable surface with the nose touch looks great. Also on these two unstable surfaces. On the pods, I may have separated them just a little bit. And with the bones, just be careful that hind end doesn't slip. Otherwise, looking great. Just standing there for up to 10 seconds, we're going to get such a great workout. And we could see he looks pretty efficient at this. Great setup for the backing up. So just using this little gait and with the guide, and we could see he's doing it nice and slow and purposeful. So this is fantastic. Very nice job with this. And I love his speed of doing this. You've done an excellent job with this and working on his targeting. And we could see that his hind end moves first. Going down the stairs, lots of work on those forelimbs. And I love how how great he's being with this and how patient he's being with you. Maybe getting some sniffs in there too. So that was fantastic. Thank you. Sneaking in my sip there. So we look at Grady here. And walking, I know it's often hard to video and get walk at the same time, but the uphill and we're getting a little bit of a pull looks great to work on that hind end. Here, when we're looking, I think we're trying to get him to stand. So we just want to be careful with our targeting and where we're putting our targeting. So if the treat or the hand signal is up too high, we'll encourage a sit. So, and then usually on a stand, we want to keep the target about nose length so the dog doesn't sit. And it is difficult to get them to stand still, but so something for you to work on with them. Ren, and again, already loving the surface. I always love when people are working on carpet or mats with their dogs. So looking here, Mr. Ren, or Miss Ren, I'm sorry. So sorry about that. So Ren is doing a great job standing. And again, looking at the head placement. So just looking up slightly does not engage a sit, but we'll get a little bit of transfer onto the hind end. The unstable surfaces look great. So the disc in the back looks perfect. I wouldn't add any more air to that. So we don't want too much instability, but that looks fantastic. On the sit to stands, so I like to add these in whenever I can. And you could work on how much extension, the dog is getting. Moving on to the unstable surfaces, we're seeing that Ren has to work a little bit more. She's got to really work on those hind end there. Her left leg seems like she's keeping that in a little bit more. Looks like she prefers her right side and she may be right-sided. Love the forelimbs up here on the uneven surface. We're getting more weight onto the rear, and we're also getting a little bit more of hip extension and lower back extension. Then adding the sit to stands, this is fine that she's not keeping her forelimbs up there. We're still getting great core workout here, so that looks fantastic with her. Backing up onto the disc, you can tell she's done this before. So you may want to try her without a target so she could just go back and work with that. So we have our standing on the flat, and this looks great. I'm so glad that you're on the yoga mat and looking fantastic. On the unstable surface, she looks great on this. And we could see just a little bit of weight shift, grabbing with the cookies and a little bit of a ripple. So this unstable surface, a little bit more unstable. We see the hind limbs coming in. I'd like the second level, and I'd probably hold off on this just a little bit until we get a little bit more stability. The sit to stand on the flat, because you're so much taller than her, I may ask you to sit in a chair so she's not extending her head as much. So just so you're a little bit more on her level, and that may help with her form too. Using the foam to do sit and stand looks great. And again, that shift with the forelimbs, no problem there at all. That looks fantastic. And forelimbs up on, it looks like a dog bowl. We're getting a nice stretch to the hip flexors as well as the lower back. And we're getting more weight onto those hind limbs. And this looks fantastic. Putting the forelimbs up higher, so we're getting more of a stretch onto the hip flexors and the lower back and more weight. And then the backing up, she's doing great too. Again, just because of the height difference, I'd ask you maybe to get a little bit lower. I love the two dogs walking. So this looks like a great day out there, and that looks fantastic. So Hemsworth, we'll look at your video here. So this is perfect. So the stand looks great with the chin rest on the couch. A little bit excited there. The unstable surface looks fantastic. As the head is up, we're getting a little bit more weight on the rear. Forelimbs up on the bone look great. I would just be careful that that bone doesn't flip. Maybe take a little bit of air out. But we get some nice weight onto the rear as well as a nice stretch. And the sit to stand looks great. So he's getting a lot of nice hind limb extension here. So that looks fantastic. Good job with that. And again, the surface looks fantastic. Raising the forelimbs up, we're getting more work on the hind limb extensors. And when I say that, I mean the hamstrings and the gluteals or the butt. And we're also getting some work onto those lumbar extensors. So this looks really nice. And he's doing a great job. Backing up, I love the handles. This is a great idea to set up a little path. And you can certainly, I'm huge on quality over quantity. So as soon as the dog starts to get, a little bit of movement down, just keep reinforcing it so we get good movement with those hind end. And then we can start adding a little bit more distance. This looks like an awesome downhill and an uphill when you come up. So it looks almost like, just a fantastic area. And the downhill is going to put much more stress onto the shoulders. So we want to make sure that we're taking that easy. And the uphill looks great. So nice work with Hemsworth there. Toby, so my long back dog, and again, great job just having him start the exercises on the rug. Since he does have a long back, we want to make sure that his core and his overall strength remains very in tip-top form. So excellent job with the stand. We're looking, is he transferring his weight anywhere? You can see his head position looks great. Same comment, if it's easier for you with bending over and with him, you can try sitting. On the unstable surfaces, I'd just like you to take some air out of those bones. You can see they could potentially flip, and there's a little bit more movement there. So I would just I'm always like to be safer. So just a little bit of air out of those, but those look great. Forelimbs up on the step, great. This is a fantastic stretch for his lower back as well as his hip flexors. Moving up a little bit more, same with the stretch, and more weight onto those hind end. Head up is going to increase the weight onto the rear end, and this looks great. Then doing the sit to stands, you have to look closely at him standing here. So he's got to work to use those hip extensors and his rear. So this looks fantastic. You could also, I don't know if you feel comfortable just sitting right there and having him do that. The back, using that bed, this looks great. And again, we have to look at his legs there to make sure they're extending. The walk looks great. And I know he's looking up and heeling and then looking at us. So the walk looks great. When a dog looks up and is heeling quite a bit, I always like to add some stretches just to the opposite side. We'll take a look at Camelot here. Great stand on these unstable surfaces, and using the pillows or the cushions look fantastic. So this is something simple. Where you are will depend upon where his head position is. So we want to try to be straight on. And him working with the sit and stands, he's very excited. You can either cue these or maybe even have him lick with a spoon of peanut butter just to get a more fluid movement. But we're still getting it. Forelimbs up on the ottoman look great. So we're getting some nice stretch to those hip flexors. We're also getting, oh, I love his enthusiasm here. So just to follow up, we're getting a nice stretch onto those hips, and we're getting a little bit more work on those hips. So this looks great. And we've got some instability in the forelimbs, so he's working his core more too. I love it. I love the creativity here. So this really looks nice. And he's having a great time. I love the enthusiasm. I know he wants to get right up on there and get some work done. And then the stepping back, fantastic. And working on the unstable surfaces, this is great. So we think about the obstacles a dog has to overcome and, just stepping on the uneven surfaces. So this looks great, and I'm going to respond to some of your individual questions on the forums as well. So thank you so much.